There's something different about the silence when you're home alone. It's not peaceful, it's loud. Every creak of the floorboards, every hum of the fridge, every gust of wind outside starts to sound wrong. You try to tell yourself it's nothing, that you're just imagining things. But what if you're not? What if that shadow in the hallway isn't from a passing car? What if that faint tapping on the window isn't just a branch? And what if the reason your dog keeps growling at the basement door is because someone's down there? These are 4 real stories from people who were left alone at home, just like you are right now, and faced something they'll never forget. Some made it out shaken. Some never found answers. And for one, it was almost too late. Let's begin. This happened to me about 4 years ago, when I was still in high school. I was 16 at the time, living in a quiet suburb in Oregon with my mom and younger brother. Our house was in one of those calm neighborhoods where nothing ever happens. Everyone knew each other, people waved from their porches, and kids rode their bikes until sunset. It felt safe, too safe maybe. That night, my mom had taken my brother to stay with our aunt a few towns over. I had a big math test the next day and begged her to let me stay home and study. She agreed, left dinner in the fridge, and reminded me to lock all the doors before bed. I was used to being home alone, and honestly, I kind of enjoyed the quiet. I microwaved some leftovers, watched YouTube on the couch, and texted my friend about the test. Everything felt totally normal. But around 10 p.m., I noticed the air felt heavier. You know that weird, uncomfortable pressure in your chest when something's off, even if you don't know what. That's what it felt like. The house wasn't silent anymore. It felt like it was listening. I brushed it off as nerves and went upstairs to get ready for bed, completely unaware that my night was about to take a turn I'd never forget. As I got ready for bed, I kept hearing faint noises, like soft thuds or creaks, but I figured it was just the house settling. It was an old place, and the wooden floors always made sounds at night. I brushed my teeth, changed into pajamas, and plugged in my phone to charge. That's when I noticed it. The bathroom door slowly shifting open behind me. I froze, toothbrush still in my mouth. The door hadn't been closed all the way, and maybe the draft from the open window downstairs caused it. That's what I told myself. I closed it firmly and locked it, just in case. My heart was beating a little faster than usual, but I shook it off. Back in my bedroom, I crawled under the blankets and opened TikTok, trying to distract myself. That's when I heard a soft clicking sound coming from downstairs. It was faint, but steady, like someone tapping metal against wood. I paused the video and listened. Click, click, click. It stopped after a few seconds. Maybe something fell in the kitchen. Maybe a spoon shifted in the sink. It had to be something harmless. I didn't want to go down there, but I also didn't want to lie awake wondering all night. So I grabbed the flashlight from my nightstand, told myself I was being paranoid, and slowly crept out of my room to check. Every step down the stairs felt heavier than the last. The house, which had once felt so familiar, was starting to feel foreign, like I wasn't alone anymore. I reached the bottom of the stairs and froze in the dark hallway. The kitchen light was off, but moonlight from the window spilled just enough to see the room. I stood there, holding my breath, flashlight shaking in my hand. Nothing moved. I stepped in, flicked on the light, and looked around. Everything seemed normal. No fallen objects, no open cabinets, no sign of anything strange. I even checked the sink. Nothing but the spoon I used earlier. I turned to head back upstairs, and that's when I saw it. The back door, the one we never use, was unlocked. The deadbolt was turned. I know for a fact I checked all the doors before bed. My stomach dropped. I locked it immediately and backed away, heart racing. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. The next night, around the same time, 10:15 p.m., I heard the clicking again. This time, it was closer, coming from the living room. I didn't go downstairs. I stayed in bed, covers pulled over my head, listening. It went on for 3 minutes, then stopped. The night after that, the TV turned on by itself. Volume full blast. Static screen. I ran downstairs and shut it off, completely freaked out. I unplugged it and went back to bed, but I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow looked like a person. By the 4th night, I was too scared to stay in the house alone. My mom was still out of town, and I didn't want to bother her, so I called my best friend to come over. We stayed up, talking, trying to laugh it off. Then, right on cue, 10:15 p.m., the hallway light turned on by itself. No footsteps, no sound, just a soft click of the switch and the slow hum of the bulb flickering to life. My friend went pale. Dude, who else is in this house? We stood frozen at the edge of my bed, staring at the hallway outside my door. The light was still on. Neither of us moved. My friend whispered, "Do you think it's like a prank? Someone broke in." I wanted to believe that. I really did. But something inside me, deep in my gut, knew this wasn't a person. Then we heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate, moving from the hallway toward the stairs. But here's the thing. There was no shadow under the door. No sound of the wood creaking like it always did when someone walked on it. Just those slow, steady footsteps echoing through the air like they weren't touching the ground. Then silence. I picked up my phone, hands shaking, and turned on the flashlight. We both crept toward the door, barely breathing. I reached out, heart pounding in my throat, and slowly opened it. The hallway was empty, but the light at the far end, the one above the attic stairs, was flickering. That's when we saw her. At the edge of the attic hatch, half in shadow, stood a woman. Pale skin, long, tangled black hair that hung in wet strands around her face. Her eyes were open wide, almost glowing, and she was smiling. No, not smiling. Grinning. Her dress looked old, stained, torn at the edges, and she was swaying, like she was listening to music only she could hear. I couldn't move. Neither of us could. We just stood there, staring. Then she tilted her head slowly, almost like she was acknowledging us, and vanished. Not like she ran, not like she faded. She just blinked out of existence. The light exploded overhead with a pop, plunging us into darkness. My friend screamed. I slammed the door shut and locked it, heart racing so fast I thought I might pass out. In the corner of the room, that night, backs against the wall, flashlights aimed at the door, waiting, listening, hoping she wouldn't come back. The next morning, we left the house as soon as the sun came up. Neither of us had slept. My mom was supposed to be back that evening, and I knew I had to tell her something, but I didn't even know where to start. My friend wouldn't stop shaking. She swore we had to burn the place down or move out. That afternoon, while trying to calm down, I remembered something strange, something I hadn't really thought about until that moment. For days earlier, the same day my mom and brother left, I had been cleaning out the storage room under the stairs. It was packed with old junk, and I had come across a dusty wooden box wrapped in plastic. It was sealed with old nails and had no markings. I only opened it out of curiosity. Inside was a faded black and white photo of a woman, that woman. Pale face, blank eyes, same torn dress. And beneath the photo was a child's dress, folded neatly, but stained with something dark. I remember getting a weird feeling, like the air got thick all of a sudden. I thought it was just the dust, so I shut the box and pushed it back into the corner. But now it all made sense. That box was hers. I had disturbed something that was never supposed to be touched. Maybe it had been hidden away for a reason, and by opening it, I let her out, like lifting the lid on something that had been quietly waiting. I went back into the storage room later that night, with my mom this time. The box was still there, but the photo was gone, and in its place was a piece of paper, for words were scratched into it, like they were carved with a nail. "You shouldn't have looked." After finding that note, something in me snapped. I couldn't stay in that house another minute. I begged my mom to take me and my brother to a hotel. I told her everything, about the noises, the door unlocking, the woman in the hallway. She didn't believe the ghost part, but the fear in my voice must have convinced her something was seriously wrong. We packed a few things and left that night. At the hotel, I tried everything. I Googled how to get rid of spirits, downloaded some weird prayer apps, even played a YouTube video of a house blessing on loop while I slept. For a day or two, I felt okay, like maybe I'd left it all behind. Then the dream started. She was there, in every one, standing at the foot of my hotel bed, swaying. Sometimes she whispered things I couldn't understand. Sometimes she just stared. But the worst part? I'd wake up and find dirt on the carpet by the door. Footprints, leading from the door to my bed. No matter where I went, she followed. It wasn't the house that was haunted anymore. It was me. We moved out of that house a month later. My mom thought I just had a breakdown from stress and nightmares, but I knew the truth. I had opened something that didn't want to stay hidden. Things have been quiet since we left. No more lights turning on. No more footsteps or whispers. But I still don't sleep well. I keep the hallway light on all night. I check every door and window twice before bed. And I never, ever open boxes I don't recognize. Last week, I was unpacking an old duffel bag from our move, one I hadn't touched since we left the house. At the very bottom, beneath some shirts, was that photo, the black and white one. I know I didn't pack it. I never touched it again after that night. But there it was. And on the back, written in that same scratchy handwriting, was something new. I'm still with you. So if you ever find something that feels wrong, a photo, a sound, a shadow where there shouldn't be one, don't ignore it. And whatever you do, don't look too closely. Have you ever experienced something strange while home alone? Maybe something you couldn't explain? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if you enjoy true creepy stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. More nightmares are coming soon. They say your mind plays tricks on you when you're alone too long, that your brain starts filling in the silence with imaginary sounds and movements, shadows where there are none. But what if it's not your mind? What if that flicker you saw in the corner of your eye was real? What if the silhouette standing outside your window, completely still, wasn't your reflection? And what if you blinked and it was closer? This story comes from a girl who stayed home alone for just one night while her parents were away. One night, one ordinary evening in a normal house. But by the time the sun rose, she would never look at her bedroom window the same way again, because some visitors don't knock. They just watch. It happened last winter, during a snowstorm that hit upstate New York. My name's Rachel, and I was 17 at the time. My parents were out of town for a wedding, and I stayed behind to watch our dog, Max. They were only gone for the weekend, and honestly, I was excited for the alone time. We lived in a small house surrounded by trees, no close neighbors, just a long driveway and a big backyard. Cozy in the daytime, creepy at night. I spent most of that evening on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching old horror movies and scrolling through my phone. Max laid near the fireplace, snoring like usual. It was peaceful, in that weird, quiet way snow makes everything feel hushed. I remember thinking, this is kind of nice. But just before midnight, Max suddenly sat up. Not barking, not growling, just stiff, ears up, eyes fixed on the front window. That was the first time I felt it. That tight feeling in my chest. Like something was off. I looked out the window. Nothing but falling snow. Still, Max didn't move. He just stared. And that's when the porch light flickered. I told myself the porch light was probably just shorting out from the snowstorm. It was old, and the wiring had always been weird. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Max was pacing now, low growls rumbling from his throat. He kept looking between me and the front window like he wanted me to see something. I got up, walked slowly toward the window, and peeked through the curtain. Nothing. Just snow swirling under the porch light. But as I turned to walk away, I saw it. Footprints, leading from the street to my front steps, fresh ones, clear in the snow. But there was no one out there. No knock, no doorbell, no movement. I turned on the porch light again, trying to see better. And that's when Max lost it. He barked and jumped toward the window, teeth bared, eyes locked on something outside. I spun back and saw it too. Just for a second, standing in the tree lane, halfway hidden behind the edge of the woods, was a man. No coat, no hat, just a pale face and a smile. Not moving, not waving, just watching. The light flickered again and went out. When it came back on, he was gone. I stood there frozen. Every instinct in my body told me to lock the doors. So I did. Deadbolts, chains, everything. I even pushed the couch in front of the front door, because something told me he wasn't done. I barely slept that night. Every sound made me jump. Every gust of wind against the windows sounded like footsteps on the porch. Max wouldn't leave my side. He stayed alert, ears twitching, tail low. By morning, I almost convinced myself I imagined the man. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe the snow played tricks on my eyes. But then I checked the yard. The footprints were still there. And they weren't just at the front. They wrapped around the house, all the way to the back, right up to my bedroom window. There were no prints leaving, just a messy cluster in the snow below the glass, like someone had stood there for a long time watching. That night, I shut every curtain, turned on every light, and kept Max in my room. I even placed a chair under my doorknob. It felt dramatic, but I didn't care. I needed to feel safe. At 11:47 p.m., almost the exact same time as the night before, Max started growling again. But this time, he wasn't looking at the window. He was looking at the closet. I stared at the door, my breath caught in my throat. It was shut. Nothing had moved. Then tap, tap, tap. Not from the closet, from the window behind me. I turned slowly and pulled back the curtain just an inch. He was there again, closer this time, standing just on the edge of the porch light, face half lit. That same awful smile stretched across his face. He raised one hand and tapped the window with a single finger. Tap, tap, tap. I dropped the curtain and backed away. And then the porch light flickered and died. Again, I didn't scream. I couldn't. My throat locked up, like my body didn't want to make a sound that might let him know I was still watching. Max was growling low and constant, pressed against my leg. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, but my hand was shaking too much to even dial. Then came the footsteps. Crunch, crunch, slow, crunch, deliberate. Right outside the window. I didn't want to look again, but I had to. I pulled the curtain just a bit and saw his face, right there, inches from the glass. But something was wrong. His features weren't normal. His mouth was too wide, like it had been stretched. His eyes were almost black, and he wasn't breathing. No steam, no fog on the glass. Just that dead, frozen grin. And then, without warning, he leaned forward and licked the window. A slow, deliberate smear across the glass. That's when I screamed. I grabbed Max, ran out of the room, and slammed the door behind me. I didn't even stop to grab my coat or shoes. I just ran barefoot into the snow, to the neighbor's house 2 lots down, banging on their door until they let me in. The police came 20 minutes later. They searched the yard, the woods, the street. No footprints, no signs of a man, nothing. But when they checked my bedroom window, one of the officers called me over. There, smeared across the glass, still damp and slightly fogged, was a streak, a tongue mark. The officer said maybe it was a prank, a sick joke. But when I told him the man had no jacket, no hat, no gloves, and below freezing weather, he looked at me like he wasn't so sure anymore. And me, I never slept in that house again, because I know what I saw, and I know that thing was not human. A few days after it happened, I was staying at my aunt's house in the city. My parents cut their trip short and came home early, but even after the police report and extra locks, I refused to step foot back in that house. I started digging around online, trying to make sense of what I saw. I thought maybe it was a person, a stalker, a drifter, something logical. But then I found something. There was a post on a local paranormal forum, years old, from a woman who used to live on the same street. She described something eerily similar. A man who appeared in the snow during storms. Pale, smiling, always watching. He never broke in, never spoke, just stared. For 3 nights. Then vanished. One reply chilled me to the bone. It said, "We called him the Watcher in the snow. He only shows up when someone is alone. Don't let him see your face through the glass. If he does, he'll come closer each night, until there's no glass between you." I remembered something else, too. Something that didn't hit me until later. When I first moved into that house at age 12, I had found a scratched-up piece of wood tucked in the basement rafters. Carved into it were 3 words. "Don't open blinds." Back then, I thought it was just a joke. Some leftovers dare from kids before us. But now, I think it was a warning. And I broke it. After reading that forum post, I was done pretending it was just in my head. I showed it to my mom and begged her to move. She didn't believe the whole watcher story, but something about the fear in my voice must have gotten through, because we put the house up for sale the next week. But before we moved, I went back one last time to get some of my things. I refused to go in alone, so my dad came with me. Broad daylight, no snow. I thought it would feel safe. It didn't. The house was freezing, colder than outside, like something was still in there. When I got to my room, the window was open. Not broken, just unlatched. There were no footprints in the snow below it, no marks. No wind would have opened it from the inside. It was just open. I slammed it shut and pulled the blinds down for good. That night, even back at my aunt's place, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing a tapping sound, soft, rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. But every time I checked, there was nothing there. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't alone anymore. Wherever I went, whatever I did, he knew my face now. And no glass was ever going to be enough. We moved out 2 weeks later. Sold the house to a young couple who probably thought it was just a cozy winter home tucked away in the woods. I didn't warn them. Part of me wanted to. But how do you explain something like that without sounding insane? I never saw him again. Not directly. But sometimes, late at night, I'll catch a reflection in the window that doesn't match my own. A slight movement behind me when the room is still. I've even covered some of the windows in my new place, just in case. And Max, he still growls when it snows. I think the watcher only comes for certain people. People who look too long. Who makes eye contact? Who sees him? So, if you're home alone during a snowstorm, and you hear footsteps crunching just outside your window, don't look. Don't draw the curtain. Don't try to see who's there. Because if you do, he'll know your face too. What would you do if someone watched you from the window and smiled? Ever had a home alone experience that didn't feel right? Drop your story in the comments. I'd love to read it. And if you enjoy true creepy tales, hit like and subscribe for more. Some rooms are locked for a reason, not because they're dangerous to you, but because you're dangerous to them, because something inside doesn't want to be disturbed. But what happens when you do? When you open the one door you were told never to open? This story comes from a guy who thought he was just house-sitting for a quiet weekend. Feed the cat, water the plants, stay out of the guest room, simple. Until that door opened on its own, and something stepped out. If you've ever heard unexplained footsteps above you, when no one's supposed to be home, this story might feel uncomfortably familiar. Just remember, curiosity doesn't always kill the cat. Sometimes it follows you home. My name's Kyle, and this happened when I was 20. I was house-sitting for a family friend, Ms. Geller, while she went out of state to visit her sister. She lived alone in a big 2-story house on the edge of town, tucked behind a line of thick pine trees. The place had a warm, old lady charm, crocheted blankets, floral wallpaper, and a cat named Pickles that hated everyone. She gave me the tour before leaving, kitchen, bathroom, thermostat instructions, and then paused in front of the last room at the end of the hall. "This one stays locked," she said firmly, jiggling the handle. "Don't go in there. Just ignore it." I didn't ask questions. I didn't care. I was getting paid to watch Netflix and eat snacks for 3 days. The first night was uneventful. I fed Pickles, made frozen pizza, and passed out on the couch with a blanket. But sometime around 3 a.m., I woke up, not to a sound, not even a bad dream, but to the feeling that someone was watching me. And from upstairs came the soft sound of floorboards creaking, right outside the locked room. I stayed frozen on the couch, staring at the ceiling. The creaking stopped after a few seconds, but I knew what I heard. It wasn't the house settling. It was slow, steady like footsteps. I got up, heart pounding, and went to check the front and back doors. Both were locked. Pickles were curled up on the recliner, totally unfazed. I stood at the bottom of the stairs for a long time, listening. Nothing, just silence. Still, I couldn't shake the unease. So I grabbed a knife from the kitchen drawer, just in case, and slowly made my way upstairs. Every step creaked under my weight. When I reached the hallway, the air felt colder. I passed the bathroom, then the guest room. Everything looked normal. until I reached the locked door, the one I was told not to open. Except now, it was open just a crack. I stared at it, trying to remember if maybe Miss Geller had left it that way. But no, she'd checked the handle herself. It was definitely locked before. I stepped closer, barely breathing, and gently pushed it open with the tip of the knife. The room was empty. Just a dusty old bedroom. Twin bed, a dresser, lace curtains. Nothing looked wrong, except the mirror. It was an old, full-length mirror with a carved wooden frame, and someone had drawn something on it with their finger. Just one word, hello. After seeing that word on the mirror, I shut the door immediately and locked it, this time double-checking it clicked shut. I even wedged a chair under the knob, just to be sure. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. Every little noise had me sitting up, gripping the knife like it would actually help. The next day, I tried to convince myself it was a prank. Maybe Miss Geller had a weird sense of humor, or maybe she forgot to mention someone else had a key. But then it happened again. That night, around 3:15 a.m., I woke to the sound of soft tapping. It was coming from upstairs again. I sat up, holding my breath. Tap, tap, tap. It sounded like someone knocking, but from the inside of the locked room. I went upstairs slowly, flashlight in hand. Pickles followed me part of the way, but stopped at the top step, hissing at the hallway. The chair I'd wedged under the doorknob, it was pushed aside. The door, unlocked again. This time, I didn't open it. I stood there, frozen, listening, and from the other side of the door came a voice, a whisper, dry and slow, almost playful. I see you. That was it. I ran back downstairs, locked myself in the bathroom, and sat in the tub with the knife in my lap until sunrise. I texted Miss Geller in the morning. She didn't reply, but that night, she called me. Her voice was shaky. She said, "Kyle, did you go in that room?" I told her what happened. The mirror, the voice, the door opened on its own. She was quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, "I locked it to keep her in." After Miss Geller said that, I locked it to keep her in. The line went dead. No click, no goodbye, just silence, like the call had been swallowed by something. I didn't know what she meant. Her? Who was her? I didn't want to find out. I packed a bag and planned to leave first thing in the morning, but I couldn't sleep. I left every light in the house on. I sat on the living room floor with Pickles curled next to me, both of us facing the stairs. That's when the thudding started. Not footsteps. Thuds. Like something was throwing itself against the walls upstairs. First one, then again, and then the sound of the door slamming open. I grabbed the knife again. My body was screaming to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Then I saw her. She came down the stairs slowly. Pale skin stretched tight across her face, like paper about to tear. Her eyes were completely white, no pupils. Her dress was old, dusty, and shredded at the hem like it had been clawed from the inside. And the worst part, she was dragging her fingers along the wall, leaving behind long, black smudges, like ash or soot. Pickles bolted into the kitchen, hissing louder than I had ever heard. She looked right at me and smiled. Not a human smile. It was too wide, too forced, like her skin was cracking just to make the expression. She opened her mouth and spoke in a voice that sounded like it came from under the floorboards. "You let me out. I didn't lock the door. I just ran out into the night barefoot, cold, and shaking. I drove straight to my parents' house and never went back." And later, when Miss Geller returned, she said the room was locked again. But the mirror? It had a new word on it. "Thanks." A week later, Miss Geller called me again. This time, her voice was calmer, tired, but calm. She told me everything. The locked room used to belong to her daughter, Hannah. She died in that house almost 30 years ago. Accidental overdose. Or so the police ruled. But Miss Geller said there was always something wrong with that room, even before Hannah died. Whispers, cold spots, shadows that didn't belong. After the funeral, Miss Geller sealed the room. Not out of grief, but out of fear. She told me she once saw Hannah's reflection in that mirror 2 days after she was buried. Every time she opened the door after that, the mirror had changed. First with fog, then words, then shapes. That's when she brought in someone, some kind of psychic or medium, who told her there was something trapped in the mirror, not her daughter, something wearing her daughter's face. The woman said, "If it ever speaks to someone directly, I'll try to follow them." I asked Ms. Geller why she didn't destroy the mirror. She said she tried once, took it outside and smashed it with a sledgehammer. It didn't break. It didn't even crack. So she locked the room, boarded up the vents, and kept the house as quiet as she could. That seemed to work for a while. Until I came along. Until I opened the door. She paused before hanging up, then said one last thing. "If the mirror ever reappears, wherever you are, don't look into it." After that call, I threw out every mirror in my apartment. The bathroom one, the closest one, even the little one on my keychain. I couldn't risk it. But no matter what I did, I felt like I was being watched. Every night around 3 a.m., the same time everything started in that house, I'd wake up in a cold sweat, heart racing, staring at the dark corner of my room. Once I heard tapping, not at the door, not at the window, from inside my closet. I prayed. I saged the apartment. I even stayed with friends for a few nights. Nothing helped. And then the mirror showed up. It was leaning against the hallway wall outside my bedroom, identical to the one from the locked room. Same frame, same glass. Only this time, a single word was scratched across the surface. Closer. I didn't touch it. I didn't speak. I grabbed my keys, left the apartment, and never went back. I sleep in hotels now. Change rooms often. Never stay anywhere more than 3 nights. And never near a mirror. Because I realized something chilling. You don't need to bring the mirror with you. Once you see it, it finds you. It's been 6 months since I left my apartment. I don't have a fixed address anymore. I stay on the move. Cheap motels, friends' couches, anywhere with solid walls, and, most importantly, no mirrors. But no matter where I go, it always catches up. I'll find a mirror I've never seen before. In a bathroom, on the back of a door, in an alley dumpster. And every time, the message is different. Soon. Almost. Last week it said, "Behind you." I never look. I never check. But I feel it, like a cold breath on the back of my neck. And I know the truth now. I didn't just let something out. I let it attach to me. So if you ever house sit for someone, and they tell you not to open a door, don't. If a mirror suddenly appears in a place it shouldn't, walk away. Because it's not just glass. It's a door. And sometimes, what's behind it is already watching you. Have you ever looked into a mirror and felt like something was looking back? Let me know in the comments if you've experienced anything strange or unexplainable while home alone. And if you're into true horror stories, make sure to like, subscribe, and stick around. You never know what's behind the next door. Some houses breathe. You hear it in the vents, in the walls, late at night when everything else is quiet. But what happens when the house starts talking back? This story comes from a boy who stayed home alone while his dad worked night shifts. Just a few quiet evenings of video games and snacks, until he started hearing voices from the air vents. At first, he thought it was just the neighbors, or a TV someone left on. But the voices knew his name. They whispered things about him to him, from the dark metal tunnels that ran beneath the house. And the worst part, they weren't just in the vents anymore. They were getting closer. My name's Jordan, and this happened when I was 15. My parents had just divorced, and I moved in with my dad full-time. He worked overnight shifts at a distribution warehouse, so I spent a lot of evenings home alone. At first, I didn't mind. The house was small, a 1-story rental with 3 bedrooms, a cramped kitchen, and those long, narrow floor vents that hisses whenever the heat came on. I'd usually make a sandwich, play Xbox, and crash on the couch until my dad got back around 4 a.m. It was a routine. Boring maybe, but safe. Until one Thursday night. I was halfway through a match when I heard something, just beneath the sound of the fan kicking on. It sounded like someone talking. Quiet. Muffled. I paused the game, muted the TV, and listened. It was coming from the vent near the wall. I leaned closer. At first, I thought it was just static. Then, very clearly, I heard it. "Jordan, are you awake?" I jumped back so fast I knocked over my drink. The voice wasn't angry. It wasn't even loud. It was familiar. like someone I knew. I stared at the vent, heart pounding. For a moment, I convinced myself it was a glitch from my headset. Maybe someone left their mic on, but the Xbox was paused. The headset was off, and the voice had come from inside the house. I got up and walked around, checking the windows and doors. Everything was locked. I turned off the heater just in case it was making weird sounds. I even looked outside, thinking maybe a neighbor's TV was on too loud. Nothing. Still, I didn't sleep well that night. Every creak of the floor, every groan of the pipes made me flinch. The next night, it happened again. This time, the voice was clearer. It came from the vent near my bedroom, just as I was brushing my teeth. "Don't ignore me, Jordan." I dropped my toothbrush and ran to the living room. The heater wasn't on. No fans. No TV. Just silence. Then tap, tap, tap. From inside the vent, like fingers brushing against the metal. I knelt down and peered into the grate. It was pitch black, but something deep inside the vent system was moving. Not fast, just shifting. And then I heard it whisper again. "You shouldn't be alone." I slammed the vent shut, shoved a chair in front of it, and didn't go back into my room that night. After that second night, I started sleeping with the TV on, volume low, lights on. I even dragged my mattress into the living room to be farther from the bedroom vents. But the voice didn't stop. It comes every night now. Always after midnight. Always from a different vent. One night it came from the hallway. Another time, from under the kitchen sink. And once from the bathroom drain. It never yelled. It never screamed. It just whispered things it shouldn't have known. "Your mom didn't leave because of your dad. He lied about the fight. He's not coming back tonight." The more I ignored it, the more it mocked me, like it was inside my head, digging around in the stuff I didn't talk about. One night, I stuffed all the vents with towels, duct taped them shut, even turned the heater off completely. I thought maybe, just maybe, it would go away. But then I heard scratching from the hallway wall. Not the vent, inside the wall itself. I pressed my ear against the drywall, barely breathing. And from the other side, I heard it. "You can't block me out." That night, I called my dad and begged him to come home early. He didn't answer. I stayed up, lights on, knife in hand. At 2:37 a.m., every vent in the house made the same sound at once. A long, low breath, like something inhaled the entire house. Then silence, until one last whisper. "Let me out." The night it fully revealed itself started like all the others. Quiet, cold, too still. I taped every vent shut. The heater was off. No airflow. No reason for noise. But around 3:12 a.m., the temperature in the living room dropped. Not just a little. It felt like I was outside in winter. My breath fogged in the air. Pickles, sorry, wrong story. My dad's old radio suddenly clicked on by itself, though it hadn't worked in years. It let out a long, slow burst of static. And then I heard my name again. Jordan. Clear. Deep. Not whispered this time. It came from behind the wall. I turned slowly and watched frozen, as the drywall near the floor vent began to crack, right along the edge, like something inside was pushing. Then came the scratching. Slow, steady, long fingernails dragging against wood and plaster. And then bang. A dent punched outward from inside the wall. And again bang. Another one. The drywall split, crumbled, and then something reached out an arm. Thin, grayish skin, stretched over bones like it didn't belong on a person. Long fingers, too many joints. It bent in ways no limb should. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed the cast iron pan from the stove, and backed into the corner, heart pounding. Then it crawled out of the wall. Not walked, crawled, like a spider with limbs too long, head tilted sideways. It didn't have a face, just a wide mouth full of teeth and two sunken holes where I should have been. And worst of all, it was smiling. It stood upright slowly, joints cracking as it rose to full height, taller than any person I'd ever seen. It opened its mouth, and in my dad's voice it said, "Don't be scared, buddy. You let me in." I screamed and threw the pan, hit it square in the chest, but it didn't flinch. It just cocked its head like it was curious. Then it backed into the vent, into the wall, like it was melting through the cracks. The damage was done. I knew then. It wasn't haunting the house. It was using it. After that night, I refused to stay in the house alone. I told my dad everything, but of course, he didn't believe me. He thought I was having stress-induced hallucinations from being alone too much. But I knew what I saw, and I knew it came from the vents. Desperate for answers, I went to the library after school and looked up the house's address in public records. That's when I found it. An old newspaper clipping, dated 1994. A boy, aged 12, had died in that very same house. He disappeared during a snowstorm. Police thought he'd run away at first, but 3 days later they found his body, wedged deep inside the air duct system, twisted, broken. They said it looked like he'd crawled in himself, as if trying to get away from something. The article mentioned strange drawings on the vent walls, carved with a nail. They never figured out how he got so deep in, or why. His name was Daniel Harper. I remembered something then, something small, but chilling. The first night I stayed alone, before any of this started, I'd heard a weird rustling in the vent. I thought it was just the heater, but right after that I whispered, half joking, "Who's in there, huh?" That's when it all began. I didn't just hear the voice. I answered it. I acknowledged it. And now, I think whatever was trapped in those vents before, whatever took Daniel, it had been waiting for someone to listen. After learning about Daniel Harper, I knew I couldn't stay in that house another night. I packed a bag, told my dad I was crashing at a friend's, and left without looking back. But the voice followed. At first, I thought it was just in my head. I'd hear faint tapping at night, soft breathing through the bathroom vent, even at my friend's house. I started checking every room for ductwork before I entered. If a room had a vent, I wouldn't sleep there. Eventually, I went to a priest. Not because I was religious, but because I was desperate. He blessed me, gave me a small bottle of holy water, and told me something I didn't expect. It came through your voice, so you have to silence it. I didn't know what that meant, but that night, I stayed in a motel with no central air, just a window unit, no vents. Still, just past 3 a.m., the unit clicked off. The room went completely still, and from the drain in the bathroom sink, I heard it again. "I'm not in the house anymore, Jordan." I grabbed the holy water, poured the whole bottle into the sink, and shouted, "You don't have a name anymore. You're nothing." The lights flickered. The voice screamed. Then silence. For the first time in weeks, silence. But I know it's not over, because when I left that motel the next morning, I passed the front desk, and they handed me a note. No name, no return address, just one sentence, in handwriting I recognized from Daniel's file. "Vents are everywhere." It's been almost a year now. I haven't heard the voice since that night in the motel. No more scratching, no more tapping, no more whispers through the walls. But I still don't sleep well. I still check every room for vents. I still carry a bottle of holy water, just in case. My dad sold the house a few months later. He never believed my story, but even he admitted the place had bad energy. He said the new owners sealed the ducts and replaced the HVAC system completely. But that won't matter, because it doesn't live in the house. It moves through them, the vents, the drains, the pipes, any hollow place that carries sound. So if you ever hear a voice coming from the dark places in your home, a voice that sounds almost familiar, that calls you by name, don't speak to it. Don't listen to it. Because once you do, it knows how to find you. Have you ever heard something strange from a vent, drain, or wall? Something that knew your name? Tell me your creepiest home alone experience in the comments. I read every one. And if these stories kept you up tonight, like and subscribe. There's always more coming. You just have to listen.